thank you so much for joining me this morning on 5 Questions With.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, it only feels like yesterday since we were watching you play, but it's been a staggering 16 years since you've hung up your boots. How do you look back on your career now that you're not playing professional football?
I think as the years go by, I think it definitely changes as your mindset does as you get older and you look at things very differently. And ultimately, it's pride is how I look at my career. And I have a bigger understanding now of how hard it is to even make it in the first place, to that elite level. There's so many young people that want to be professional footballers, and when you're in it and when you're young, you only think about yourself. You never doubt that it'll never happen for you. You're just so blinkered in thinking you're going to make it, and that's exactly what I was like. And it's only as you get older and as time has passed that I realize how hard actually it is and how very few get to taste that top level of elite sport and especially football, with it being so popular. So for me to have made it and have got friends who didn't, to then be able to, play for 3 fantastic clubs and have that affinity now with those clubs, and to represent my country, that's just pride. I now don't even really think about the way it ended, the longevity of my career, the fact that maybe I didn't get to achieve things I wanted to. All I now focus on really is, wow, I actually got to do that. That was actually me. Especially when you have kids as well, they don't believe you that you ever did it. Even when they see the pictures, it's almost like that's not their dad. And I sometimes look and think, well, was that actually me? And it was. I'd put the work in, I'd sacrificed so many things. And I really appreciate the fact that I even got to have a career at that level and experience some of the things that I got to experience and achieve, and can now look back on with immense pride.
Considering how the game has evolved, how would you compare the experiences that young players get when they're now starting out to when you began your career?
I think they have a bigger understanding, I think, of what it is to be a footballer. They get to see things firsthand. They get to see players firsthand, from the player's own home to their training ground to the match day to international level. They get that access because of social media, and we didn't. We were going off, just a dream really, because you never really got to see that side of it. You had to make it to experience it. I think now players coming into the game have got a better understanding. They've got better tools at their disposal in terms of the knowledge that they can gain in terms of diet, fitness, sleep, everything that now is required to be a top level player. They've got at their disposal to look at, to study. And for us, it was just practice in your back garden and hope that it happens. So I think that is a big difference. But also I think that brings a bigger pressure for them. I think there is a massive pressure now for young players to have to do things the right way, to have to utilize all of these things that are at their disposal, because every other kid will do it and you can't miss out. And there's that pressure then with that exposure that if you don't make it, more people know about it, rather than maybe not making it and just slipping away into the shadows. That's not the case anymore.
There's no doubt, Dean, that financial rewards in football have grown beyond anything we possibly could have imagined over the last few years. Young players have now got the opportunity to earn significant amounts quite early on in their careers. How do you feel that this change affects the mindset and the career paths of new players?
I think first of all, it's amazing that, if you reach a certain level, you get to earn a fantastic amount of money. And so you should, because it's a small career and many people get joy from coming to watch you play or watch you on telly. It's an entertainment business, and players get paid for that. And it gives more players the opportunity, hopefully if they're sensible, to give them an unbelievable start in life, because you are young generally as a football player. So I think that's a pleasing thing from my perspective. But also it's become something money has. It's not just, I want to be a footballer. Now young people I want to be rich, because they see the money, and I don't blame them for that, because it's how difficult is it to just dismiss that and ignore it. It's nigh on impossible. Of course, let that be something that you want to achieve in your life, not a problem at all, but hopefully it doesn't cloud too many young players' judgments in that you've made it before you have, because you are getting a sense and feeling that money as it's starting to come in as a young player and an apprentice and your first year pro and all these steps that you take. The money's better now, and hopefully it doesn't cloud what is the ultimate goal of making it, because all it takes is a few months here, 6 months. It can change very quickly, and you can be out of the game very, very quickly. So I think there's two sides to it, in terms of brilliant for the players, but can probably get in the way of some players, and that's always a worry.
And I think moving on at quite an apt time, really, Dean, your career, and if you're happy to talk about that, was brought to an end quite sharply, wasn't it? And your transition from footballer into the work that you're doing now must have had some physical and mental challenges for you. So how did you manage that transition when your career ended so unexpectedly?
I mean, first of all, it's hard to explain that feeling of having to finish a career that you've worked so hard and the sacrifices you've made, and you're about to reach that peak almost of a career that you've built up to, in terms of representing your country, looking to achieve things at the highest level, and where that career can go. There's nothing anyone can say that's going to help you in that, in trying to overcome that. Luckily for me, I had amazing people around me. I have got an unbelievable sense of reality, I think anyway, coming from the place that I was, this football environment, this fantasy world that we are part of, which is incredible when you're in it. But when you step away from that, I still felt like I had a great grasp on what's actually real. And that is the main things in your life. So when you're 25, as I was, and you cannot go to the supermarket and walk around the supermarket with your family, I had to stop halfway through and go and sit down because my ankle was that bad. When you're 25 and you've got that as a reality, being a footballer does not matter. It's about your health. It's about the rest of your life that you've got. And I understood that very well, because A, the pain I was in, and I didn't want to carry on with that pain, and B, because I had kids and I understood I wanted to be able to enjoy them growing up and not having to sit and watch them play, but be out there with them playing. And that's the reality, is your health's the most important thing, your family's the most important thing. And I had both of those. And I had an unbelievable operation when I finished that's given me an incredible life in terms of no pain since after that operation. And I've always just kept that mindset of, I was privileged to have played, and the reality is, like everybody else, I still have to put the bins out. I still have to fold and iron clothes. I still have to go and do a food shop, and I still have to ferry my kids around like a taxi, like everybody else. That's the reality of life. But I then had this experience of being in this fantasy world of football. And I think that's what can be very difficult for players, is separating the two, separating the fantasy from the reality. And it gets a bit warped in between. And that's where players, I think, really struggle. And I had this clear line in between. Now, don't get me wrong, it took me 2 to 3 years to even get back to anywhere near being able to enjoy football and remembering why I loved it in the first place. And that was just me taking as much time as I needed to adapt to the fact that I wasn't Dean Ashton the footballer. I was actually just Dean Ashton again, which is absolutely fine with me. But it's something you do have to get used to. You had your life regimented every single minute of every day, to having the freedom that everybody else has. But what I never lost was that love of football. The fact that I just love football is my absolute passion. So why wouldn't I try and do something within football? So I looked at all the avenues. I looked at the coaching side, which of course, having come through in a fantastic academy at Crewe Alexandra, made me want to be a coach and try and give back. I tried it. Mentally, I could not cope. Not even close. I was just coming away from training sessions where I'd shadowed coaches and just felt so down because I was looking and thinking I'm still young, I should be playing, and I was missing it too much, and I maybe didn't have the enthusiasm that I think you need to coach certainly young players. I think you as a coach have to be enthusiastic if you expect them to be, and I just couldn't get that enthusiasm out of myself when it came to coaching. Whereas the media side, when I tried that, wow, it just was like, that's what I loved as a player, was the game. Training was amazing. The squads were great, of course. That camaraderie every single day will always be missed. But it's that turning up at a stadium filled full of tens of thousands of people coming to watch, in my head, me. And I was a striker, so I was quite selfish. But that's how I felt, that all these people coming to watch, and the people watching at home were coming to watch. And I had that chance to go to a game and change the atmosphere by something I did. So once I got back into the media and started going to the live games and commentating on live games, I absolutely loved it. It just didn't feel like, I can't call it a job. My wife won't let me, and she's right, because it's not. It's just like it was before as a player. It's that just pure enjoyment of going to a game, and now, experiencing what it's like with the supporters and what it's like for them and what it means to them, and being part of that. I feel like I've got this sort of second career that I maybe never thought I'd have, and that love of turning up somewhere, and a little bit of nerves as well, because you want to do well and something to strive towards and trying to improve. And I've been very fortunate because of that.
Because you'd made quite an impact with your career in the media, from my perspective anyway. I mean, I still remember taking your first ever headshots, which must be at least 10 years ago, when you were thinking about going into the media role. And I mean, what were the challenges that over the past decade that you faced getting into that industry that you love so much?
I think, to start with, and probably many players feel the same, is you think you've played the game. What don't I know? As a player, if I turn up to a game, I've played the game. I played the game at the highest level. I've got so much knowledge about the game, both tactically and in game, because I've been there, I've lived it. I know what it's like to run through on goal, for example. And effectively, that's totally wrong because it's a totally different industry. There's many other skills that are actually required. And that was the challenge, was actually going back to the start almost of not being the star of being a player, but back to the start again, where you're almost an apprentice. You've got to learn actually what's required, all the intricacies of being in the media and working alongside some top professionals and commentators and pundits that have been doing it for years and have learnt all those tiny details, whether it's radio or TV. And actually, it's been fantastic to go back to that and build my career and learned and tried to improve, and I've treated it a bit like my football career in that I know I'm not the finished article by any means, and all the time I can try and improve, but always keeping that little bit of humbleness of actually I'm coming into their world, and trying to make a career of it, rather than maybe the other way around when people were coming into football. That was my world. So I'm sort of learning all the time, but appreciating the fact that actually there's a lot more that goes into it than certainly I thought when I finished football, but I've enjoyed that challenge.
Have you had any mentors or people that you really look up to in the world of sports commentary and punditry who have inspired or guided you along the last few years?
I don't tend to use just one person. I never have tried to do that as such, because I'm quite nosy, and I'm more than happy to ask for feedback from some of the top level commentators or producers that I've worked alongside or worked for, because I want to learn and I want to get better. And I was happy, and sometimes not happy, taking criticism from absolutely everybody that wanted to give it in football. It's not quite the same in the media. So I wanted to search for some feedback. And so sometimes you've got to be a bit brash and a bit bold, and it might feel uncomfortable, but I actually do want their feedback. These are people that have been in the industry for many years, that have worked alongside many co-commentators or pundits, and can give a real insight for me as to how I can get better. So being able to take a little bit from all of these top people, the likes of Martin Tyler and Peter Drury, John Champion, Sam Matterface, Clive Tilsley, some of these incredible commentators that have worked in the game down the years, to be able to just take a little nugget here and there from them and get some feedback, I think is really important. And you should never be embarrassed about that, and I never have been, in terms of sort of knowing your level and knowing that, why not take some advice from some of the best people in the industry to try and improve yourself and get better.
And your career has already taken you literally across the world. So I imagine in that time that you've got some memorable stories that you could hopefully maybe share with us.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm incredibly fortunate that I've been able to travel. Like you say, travel across Europe and parts of the world already with this job. And again, it's about that humbleness. One of my earliest jobs was where I went to a game, and you think as a superstar footballer that's just retired, everyone should just open the doors for you. And when I turned up to games, it was in a coach, and we just pulled up and the doors open and you walk in, it's all laid. When you turn up as an ex-player who's working in the media, there's none of that. You got to find where you've got to go. You walk up to Dave and Barry on the gate. They've got no idea who you are. In fact, they thought I was John Ruddy typically. And then once you're in, you've got to sort yourself out, and it's very, very different. And then you're alongside, the likes of a Thierry Henry, who I played against, but had no idea that I was a player. He probably thought I was there to get the coffees. And it's about, understanding those situations and being humble enough just to sort of take that in. And also, we travel to Frankfurt as well, with TalkSport. Frankfurt actually has 2 airports, if anyone doesn't know. And unfortunately, we arrived at the wrong airport, which was a good hour and a half away. Luckily, some plucky West Ham fans had booked a minibus. So there was me, Sam Matterface, and our producer Sal, crammed into this minibus with some West Ham fans for an hour and a half journey, of them drinking and singing. And you've just got to take it on the chin. These are parts of the trips that you go on. It was a simple mistake, but it was one that one that definitely was an experience, and that it just adds to it. It's part of it. When you get to travel, you get all of those little things, and then there's some beautiful things like being in Rome for the Euros, when sadly, COVID had sort of taken over the world, but we were given access in terms of for the Euros specifically for that. But to be walking around Rome every day for 12 days when it was very quiet was something spectacular, and something I will certainly remember forever. And then getting to that first game in the Olympic Stadium, and what is better? You've turned up to Italy. You've gone to Rome. You're in the Olympic Stadium, and Andrea Pagelli is singing Nessun Dorma at the opening ceremony. I mean, there was 4 of us, not a dry eye in the place. It was just one of those unbelievable moments that you sort of got to pinch yourself and think, are we actually experiencing this? And again, I sort of hark back to the career, but I didn't think I would have those days or those moments again. And that was one of those where you just like, it couldn't be more perfect in the way that happened.
So some great memories.
Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. And more to come as well. That's what's, I guess, great in a sense, that, when you finish your career, a lot earlier than you think, there's other things to look forward to.
So Dean, you're regularly on television and on TalkSport radio, which is, in my opinion, the UK's very best sport and radio channel. Do you still have aspirations within your media career? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, and I think that's something I always wanted from a second career, was something that I could set goals and achieve things and have aspirations of getting to a certain level. And for me, there are many things that I still want to be able to achieve certainly as a co-commentator, or being able to do England games at international tournaments. Obviously England have got to 2 Euros finals in recent years. So to be able to be in a position where you are the co-commentator for a game of that magnitude, I think is definitely a goal that I'd love to be able to achieve. To be doing the very best games, both in England and in the Champions League, these are still things that I'd love to be able to achieve. And that's why, I want to improve. I want to ask questions. I want to get feedback, and try and go as far as I can in the industry. And that's still just part of what I've always been, which is quite competitive. So, I'm competitive with myself. And I think that's usually why players make it, certainly in football, is because they're not competitive with other people. It's within. It's the competition almost against yourself, against setting these targets and then doing everything that it takes to get there. And that's exactly what I'll do with the media. Will it be slightly different than it was as a player? Of course it will be, because there'll be a different enjoyment alongside that. There was lots of my football career which I look back on, I think I was angry a lot of the time, because you set standards. If you don't quite reach them, or you have a bad time of it here and there, you're so hard on yourself. I'm a little bit older. It's a second career. It's a second opportunity. I want to enjoy it as much as I can. But at the same time, I don't want to rest on my laurels. I don't want to think, well, what I've done so far is the limit of what I can achieve. So I'll be doing everything I can to try and achieve those goals and aspirations, and reach the very top level of this industry that I love being in now.
I'm sure, Dean, that you will undoubtedly make it in your media career, and I really look forward, as I'm sure everybody else listening to this interview will join me in saying that we wish you all the very best in doing so, and we look forward to that day when we can look back on this on today's episode. I mean, it's been a really fascinating insight, and I'd just like to thank you for today, because it's been incredible. But before we finish, we always ask our guests one final question before they leave. So, if you were a superhero, what would your superpower be and why?
It would be super strength. It would be the Hulk, effectively, if I have to name one. I've just always had this fascination with like strength and someone like an Arnold Schwarzenegger and the size and the power. And I think if I had that one superpower, it would be super strength. I'm not quite sure how useful it would be, but I wouldn't care. I just enjoy having that power, I guess, while I had it.
Dean, thank you very much for today. That's been absolutely amazing.
Very, very kind. Thank you.